Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 134. I'm getting back into the swing of making podcasts and preparing interviews and all that stuff, and it's something that I love very much, and it feels so good to be back at it after a break. One exciting new thing that I've changed is that I'm now posting upcoming interviewees on Patreon and giving patrons a chance to propose questions that I can ask them during the actual interview. I think this is going to be a really lovely way for listeners to have the show be a bit interactive, and also for me to know the sorts of questions that you're keen to have answered by these creative nature lovers who are coming on the show. If this sounds like it would be fun for you to be part of, or if you're a long-term listener of the show and would like to help keep the project sustainable, you can join us on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Every bit of support is very much appreciated, and I'm really keen to hear your questions and ask them of my upcoming guests. You can find a link in the show notes for this episode if you would like to join us on Patreon. So today is a prompt episode, and I'd like to use this time to tell you a little story, and after the story, I'll share the prompt. I have a friend called Anna who is a professional photographer, and I recently went to her house to talk to her about doing some photographs for my website. And as well as being an amazing photographer, Anna is also heavily involved in gardening and creating this permaculture extravaganza at her house. And when I was there, she and her kids showed me all around the garden, all the special plants and trees and edibles and different composting systems, and especially the chickens who have their own personalities and idiosyncrasies and names. And as we were walking along, Anna and the kids took cuttings of all sorts of plants for me to take home to my own garden. Now, I love gardening and I don't give it a lot of time, but it's something that I'm passionate about and I want to get better at. So they gave me a basket, and as we walked along, the basket got higher and higher until I had an entire armload of plants to bring home with me. And she told me all about what they were and how to take care of them. Some of them had to go in water to grow roots first, and some had to go directly in the soil. I have this place in my garden that I have in mind, and I want to dedicate it to flowers. And I've been so inspired by another friend called Kate Wall, whose home garden is just an absolute wonderland of flowers. So I'm planning to prepare this garden bed for this purpose and get flowers growing in there really soon. But at the moment, the soil isn't ready, so I had this armload of cuttings that needed attention that particular afternoon. And when I got home, I looked at this bundle and I realized that I had no idea what any of them were. I had forgotten entirely. And so I took photos of them one by one, and I sent the photos to Anna, and she patiently sent back the names of each plant and instructions on what I had to do with each one. So I put some of them in water and I put others in pots that I'd prepared. And some of the ones I put in pots were these beautiful white mulberries. I love mulberries so much. We have a regular mulberry in our backyard, and it brings so much joy to eat a whole belly full of mulberries with my son. And it also brings back childhood memories of picking buckets full of mulberries, and we would bring them back home and Mum would bake a pie. And we would have purple hands and purple faces. Anyway, so Anna offered me this white mulberry cutting, and I was really excited to start growing this different variety in the garden. And these ones had to go directly in the soil. So I prepared some pots and I filled them with soil, and I stripped most of the leaves away, leaving just the bare stem and a few leaves up the top, like Anna had told me. And I watered them, and I felt really proud of myself, and I was excited to nurture them into flourishing mulberry bushes. And it didn't happen that way. After a few days, it was really obvious that the cuttings weren't happy. They were drooping and sad, and I gave them some extra water. And a week after that, they were still standing upright in their pots, but all the leaves were withered and dried. And I was very disappointed, of course, but Anna assures me that this happens and we can get some more cuttings and try again. And as I walked past those stems standing upright with the leaves dried and drooping down, I thought that the leaves looked so beautiful. They were folding in all these different ways, and the colors were changing and getting more subtle and muted and varied. And the veins looked really prominent and complex, and I had a really strong urge to nature journal these dying leaves. And it reminded me how beautiful the process of decay can be. In fact, on the same day, Anna gave me this armful of sunflowers, which are my favorite flowers. They make me so happy. And I put them in a vase, and they really brightened up the room for about a week. And then, as they started to wilt and decay, I left them there in the vase because the way that the petals were shriveling and becoming even more interesting as they aged was just so beautiful and striking. And another example that I have of this in my recent experience is that I was preparing a garden bed with some horse manure and some mulch, and I watered the bed, and a few days later, a huge number of mushrooms sprung up through the mulch from the manure. And they looked so amazing all there together in this little forest of mushrooms. And then over the week, they started to change and decay. And it was fascinating to watch the patterns and shapes that the mushrooms started to form as they decayed. It was so beautiful and so interesting. So I went back to these shriveling, twisty, turny, interesting, beautiful mulberry leaves, and I painted them in watercolor. And now we're coming to the prompt for this week, which is to find beauty in decay. I want you to find a natural phenomenon near you. It might be an aging leaf that's changing color or shape. It might be a mushroom. It might be a flower that's changing and drying. See if you can see the beauty in these changes. How are the colors changing? How's the shape and the texture changing over this period? You might notice the textures becoming more complex or dimpled or wrinkled. Notice these lovely changes and put them down in your journal in whatever way feels natural. You might like to use words to describe what you notice and reflect on your feelings about the process of decay. I think decay is a word that has a lot of negative connotations, but in fact, this process is absolutely essential to life, and it's part of life, and it's so beautiful. I've actually created a video and a blog post to go with this prompt. In the video, you'll be able to see the lovely curling mulberry leaves and my attempt to paint them in watercolor. And you'll find the link to the video and the blog post in the show notes for this episode. So please go check that out. I plan to start building up my YouTube channel, and I'd love to have you as a subscriber over there for nature journaling prompts and videos. I'm really interested to see your experience of decay in nature and whether you can see and capture the beauty of this process. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.